Kenny here with Gardening Simplified. It is March 24th. We're well into spring. Let's do a little bit gardening talk. Okay, springtime we think about gardening. I'm just going to kind of tour the garden and do a little talking. We got one garlic nodule that's popped up. We're still waiting on them. Our tomatoes here are looking mighty rough, or uh, cherry tomatoes, but they're still hanging in there. So looks like even though they broke over, they might take off. And our new set of crop of beans here, these two rows are starting to pop up just pretty good. But what I want to talk about is those of you that are still on the bench or you're still growing conventionally, the importance of taking and growing your own food and growing it organically. I've talked in a lot of videos. You got a nice stand of tomatoes here. Now these are hybrids, but their seeds are saved from them, so they wouldn't be true hybrids. But what you want to do mainly is focus on heirlooms and open pollinators, some of the older varieties. And the main reason for that is your nutrient, available nutrients in the produce that you harvest off of there are going to be higher. And especially if they're organically grown. Now, if you're growing them with chemical fertilizers, and these are synthetic, they're made. Whenever you buy like 888, 13, all those different ones, Miracle Grow, those are all chemicals. And the whole reason to grow your own food is to get away from the chemicals. These chemicals are not good for your body. There's all kind of evidence out there. There's all kind of studies been done about a lot of different things. And you're going to hear a lot of people that's going to argue on the other side. They're going to say there's plant don't know any difference between synthetics and organics. But you put synthetics in your body versus natural, and you can tell the difference. All the studies that they've done where they've taken and tested them, see what the nutrients are, they find that the nutrients are much better in organically grown vegetables, and they're much higher in your heirloom varieties. We're going to pull the hose back here. Looks like the heat done put a kink down there, extending it out. And our weather isn't doing real good either, because the weatherman told us yesterday we had 60% chance of rain. Well, I'm going to tell you, they might have said that, but that didn't happen. Same thing with the temperatures. We had one night it's supposed to be 34, so we covered everything again because we planted so early. That's the only reason why we got produce or our plants as big as they are, is because we took the risk and put them in the ground so that they could get a good start, get bigger quicker. And we've covered them now about 3 different times. Took our little plastic pots, we've got extras. And I can see on some, like there's one over there that's blooming, what'll come through here. These are too small to be starting to produce fruit. I'm going to go ahead and pinch those blooms off. When the weather goes cold and warm, a lot of times it affects the plant. They stress a little bit, they try to put on blooms. Just like right here, we've got a bloom, and what we'll do is we'll just come through there, and when we find those, we'll pinch them off. Let these plants get up here about knee high, and then let them start blooming. The garlic, we've just fertilized it. It's looking a little pale, and it did get pretty rough winter, but it's doing good. Now, for those of you that don't follow around or haven't followed around, this whole garden was just, looked like it was getting to be a big weed patch. It really got out of control. Now, we've taken the time slowly get it back in control. And that's what it's going to take. It's not going to, sitting there worrying about all the weeds is not going to take care of it. It's just a step-by-step process. For those of you that are on the bench says, I don't want to get out here and have to fight with the garden. For the amount of time, and my time's worth money, you're not going to find that produce. I don't care if it's organic and it's in the store. Now, you can go to the farmer's market, and there are some organic farmers. They might not be certified, but they do grow organically. I'm not going to try to certify mine. In fact, I'm not going to do the farmer's market much longer because I seem to think that people don't appreciate the difference between that crap that's in the store and the stuff that you take and grow naturally. We're finally finishing up this place down here by the apple trees. We've taken up our walkways. We're just going to make this a solid area. We're kind of giving these trees more area, getting the walkways off so the roots will set in more on this east side of the plants because they tend to lean over because they don't have good root this way. So now that it'll water good and the walkway's not there, they'll tend to get a stronger root structure. But anyway, this just because we took this up, this isn't a wasted space. This year we're going to put, we've got some Seminole squash or pumpkins, whichever way you want to call them. And we're going to put them in here. They do take up quite a bit of area. I think we've got a little over half a dozen plants. And we'll just have to train them in off the blueberries. But that way this place is productive. It'll have good ground cover, so it'll be less weeding to do. But this process, it's slowly going on. Now we have had some washing here, and we're taking care of this at the same time again. And what's happening is the greenhouse, and this is a slight slope, but this greenhouse, when it drains off the side, all that water, which is quite a bit of water, comes down the side, and then it gets under the walkway and starts to wash it a trail across here. So what we're going to do, we're going to take some flashing at the bottom, so it does have to go onto the walkway material, and then we can direct it down and take care of that. But it's looking more like a garden. We're going to put us in some watermelons back here to fill this area. But a lot of things has been a little bit different. We're growing a lot of things different. Everybody, when they ask, they see produce at a certain time of the year or something. First question they're going to ask is, do you have a greenhouse? Now, you don't have to have a greenhouse to grow crops in the cooler weather unless you're pretty far north, because when you're down here, we're in zone 8B. In normal winters, when they're not aerosol in the skies and bringing vortexes down here from up the cold areas, we have a average winter to where we get some freezing, but it's not that cold. It's easy to protect plants. Now, with the way it is now, and we foreseen that this was going to happen, we took and put this greenhouse in probably about 5 years ago. You'd have to go back and look at a video so you'd really know when, but we did it because to protect a certain amount of the fallout, the aluminum that's being aerosoled in the air and stuff like that, so that it wouldn't affect the ground so much and we could control our vegetable crops better. Now, the thing about being down here in 8B is the summers are kind of brutal. When you have temperatures that stay up in the upper 90s for a long time, or sometimes get up, 106, 107, you have to plan for this, and you have to adjust for it. And we do that with the greenhouse and the shade cloth. It does affect it some in the winter. as far as keeps it a little bit cooler, but it's not enough to worry about. Now this warm and cold weather, it's really affected this fielder kraut cabbage. And a lot of people, when they start seeing their plants go to seed because it's hot and cold, they don't see it as an opportunity. I've been wanting to collect seed from my fielder kraut, but in the past years it grew so good and always got big, and I ended up harvesting it all. But this year, because of circumstances, it's really played an important part about making some of these bolt. In fact, even some like this down here, when it starts putting a whole bunch of leaves up, it's not opened up more like some of the others. That's telling me that it's going to go to seed. And when you have varieties like this and you don't have something else blooming that's another brassica, it's an ideal time to let them go to seed. The bees are going to love them for one, but you're able to collect the seeds off of these plants for future crops. And I should have a good variety of seeds this year. But it also causes problems like this bok choy here. It's little, you can see them. They're little, but they're all wanting to go to seed, even though they've been in here in the shade cloth. The warm and cold, that really affects them. It's not so much the warm weather. They can deal with temperatures up, up in mid 80s or even 90. Give them extra water. That's the same thing I do with broccoli. But the warm and then cold nights and warm and cold nights, when you get up in the mid 70s and then it gets down in the lower 40s at night, it tends to trigger your plants and cause them to start going to seed. Now I've got other plants in here, trying to grow them. My sweet potato slips are doing real well. Won't be long. I say most of them are doing real well. I do have these Covingtons was on this half. I have nothing showing from them, but for those of you that watch, I do have this one here that I started last year, and it's still going. It won't make a whole lot of slips, but it will make slips. But gardening isn't a thing that you go put the seeds in the ground and then throw some fertilizer and water there and just let them go. Gardening is one of those things that you have to stay on top of. If you want less weeds, you got to pull weeds. If you want to say, oh, well, I'm going to do permaculture, so you let the weeds all grow up in there just because you're too lazy to pull the weeds, and you end up with a real poor crop, or your plants just don't thrive because they're having to compete with all these weeds. And you're going with the assumption that because all these different varieties of other plants are there, the bugs are going to leave yours alone. There's people that'll tell you everything. There's a lot of factors that cause problems, cause your beneficial insects to come in, your negative insects to come in. And one of the main things that affects that is your soil. If you don't have your soil in good shape, you don't take the time to learn about soil. Now, I do have a video that explains quite a bit, not everything, because soil is really complicated. Even the people that talk about it, the supposedly experts, they don't agree. But the better your soil is, the more organic matter you get in it, the more you get away from chemical fertilizers. Chemical fertilizers tend to draw insects in. And if you're one of those that use them and then you're going to say, well, that's no problem, I'll just go get the 7 out. Well, you don't know what that's doing to you. We do know that it harms the bees whenever you use that on it. And the bees are important for the pollination on a lot of your plants. So what are you trying to do? You're trying to take the easy route out. You're not spending the time to improve your garden soil. You're not taking the time to go out there and pick a bug off occasionally or something. And you're not watching a lot of other methods that's out there that's a whole lot less, let's say, nasty, for lack of a better word, to put on your plants and in your garden. I do use some organic sprays, and I say some because there's some I really talk bad about. And because I do the research on it and I watch the information on it and I take the time to think about what this is doing to my plants, to my body, and the evidence is out there. All you got to do is look for it. But if you're expecting somebody to tell you everything, you're not going to remember anything. You're not going to learn anything because you're going to always have a crutch that you're going to depend on somebody else to give you the information. When I started my garden this year, I started it way early, like over a month early, a lot of it a couple of weeks early from my last frost date. Not because I was psychic or something. It was because I pay attention every year. I take and find me a good source for my weather that's fairly accurate so I can look at a long range outlook of 45 days and see what the weather's looking like, and knowing if there's any days that look like they may be cooler than they should be, that I might have to protect it. And if they get too low, then I kept waiting. And I did hold off a couple weeks for those who watch. No, because it was easier. Well, I say it was less risky not to go ahead and plant and hold the plants a couple weeks longer. And it looks as if it's paid off. We'll see how the year goes. But when it comes to gardening, you have to make the decisions. Don't listen to the information from everybody, because there's so much, should we use the word misinformation? There's so much incorrect information out there, or things that they say you have to do or need to do, problems that they say are related to something that they aren't. Take the time to study it. Don't sit on your butt and watch your little videos. Take time to read a research paper here and there. Take the time to watch your plants. Be a plant whisperer. Whenever you talk to your plants, people, they always tend to make people out that's crazy that talk to their plants, but the scientific information's out there, and I say that all the time. I talk to my plants. I enjoy my plants when I come down and I see this nice, beautiful row of young citrus that these wouldn't be here unless I planted the seeds. These were just planted from seeds. But when you do that, you have to expect to wait a while. You can't just expect these things to pop up and put on fruit next year like you would if you bought a tree. But now when I buy a tree, I know more exactly what it is. Of course, then it's grafted too. So if it ever freezes, if it doesn't get enough protection and it freezes and it decides to come back from the rootstock and you have a grafted tree, you're not going to have what you had. In fact, you're not going to have anything good as maybe a seed that you planted. most people say when they plant their trees from seed that they always have decent fruit on them as far as flavor. So don't think that you're not going to get a good tasting citrus if you plant a seed. And we'll see here. We'll go through this thing. Whenever I planted these seeds, I figured it'd be 4 years before these would even start to produce. Now they're about 3 years old. Back in January, but I already have one that's blooming. So after 3 years, it's going to bloom. Hopefully, it's big enough it can hold fruit, maybe a few fruit, and see how it tastes. And a lot of them say that the quality of the fruit gets better after a couple of years. So we'll see how that is. But my thing is, and the purpose of this video is to get you to realize that when you're gardening, you're not trying to grow the biggest, you're trying to grow the best. And that don't mean I want this newest thing. Now they've got these black cherry tomatoes out there that are GMO, and people are growing them. You know, that's first GMO seed that was offered to the home gardener, and people are growing them. They don't understand these are genetically modified. There's nothing natural about this this food. Kind of like your chicken in your store. Those birds have been bred and modified until they, I just processed 4 roosters last weekend, and they were about 10 months old, and they were actually smaller than a Cornish cross, the breed like you buy in the store whenever you go to buy a chicken. They were smaller than those, and those other chickens would have been ready to harvest in about 5 or 6 weeks. 5 or 6 weeks, a month and a half versus 10 months. And the difference is my chickens aren't white. My chicken, the skin is yellow. It's like a chicken's supposed to be. Of course, it is organic, but even when you buy organic chicken, then they're that fast growing breed, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get modified chicken. It's not healthy for you. The flavor isn't nothing like a homegrown chicken. And that's the reason why so many people now are going to homesteading or self-sufficiency or something like that, is because they want to get away from that dependency for one, but a lot of them want to get away from that frankenfood. All these varieties that have been bred to produce a lot, to produce quick, to grow quick, but they don't have the nutrients in them. So when your body's sick and you're growing your own food and you're wondering why you're still having issues, you don't feel good, or maybe you got certain ailments or something, start thinking about it. What's the difference of you growing the same kind of food as you're getting in the store? And that's what a lot of those varieties are. Oh, I like this one. I like this one. Well, then like the condition that you're in. But anyway, that's kind of what things are looking like. They're looking so good. It's taken some time. I've had to hire the help of my grandgirls. They come up here a few days a week, a few hours a day, and we've slowly just putting along, getting things ready. We've got our okra here. You need to come out and water. We've got another row of beans here. I call these my French beans. That's just because their name's kind of French, but it's a speckled pinto kind of, but it's a pole bean, so we got our fence up. But get out there get your garden. Don't think you got to be in a raised bed to do the garden. No, I don't want to bend over. Well, get you a mat and sit on the ground. Then make your beds wide enough that you can uh, work the whole thing, even if you got to get some on one side, some on the other side. Don't waste your time spending all that extra money for something that you don't need, that you're going to have uh, put more effort into it. Raised beds take more water. You've got to make sure you maintain their moisture and stuff. When you grow in the ground, you've got more like a battery of reserve water. The roots go down. They're deeper already. When you've got a raised bed and you fill it with dirt, they've got to go all the way down through that to start getting to the water and then start heading for the water table. So think about it. You know, don't don't say you got to have this, you got to have that because everybody else. Now, sometimes you might have to grow in containers because of where you're located, where you're renting a place or something. I can understand that, but take the time, prepare your garden if you have to. Now, I'm going to say right off, microplastics are a problem. And the first person I've had them come through on my videos, and they start talking about the microplastics from putting down these walkways. You know, people use plastics in their house all the time, but they're going to come and tell me about microplastics, and they've got them in their own house. Sometimes that's the method you got to go. I can't keep up with this garden, me and my wife, because the size of it. So we've got to find a method to do it. Yes, you can be concerned and you can cut it out wherever you can, but sometimes you just got to uh, deal with certain situations, and at present, that's the easiest way. We've tried wood chips. For those of you that might want to say, well, you could do wood chips. Weeds grow in there. We got a lot of seeds come in because we got strong winds. So when these plants are in their prime with seeds and that wind comes in from the south, it brings all those seeds with it. So we have to deal with that, and if it comes to a choice of trying to keep the weeds up out of the garden, it's just it's more manageable whenever we put that down. We've got this black plastic here. Yes, it's probably microplastics too, but to contain the weeds for a certain amount of time, this comes out, we cover it, and then we'll come back later and we'll take care of those weeds and get those beds ready. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, and I'm not trying to say be a prepper, because it's like all the English language throughout time. Cool used to be cool. It wasn't cool. And if you can't figure the difference, maybe you're not old enough, or uh, maybe you can't understand the difference. Because if somebody's saying that's great, is cool is great, and cool used to be not so warm, kind of towards cold. When you change words around, it's just like prepper. Uh, Nowadays, a person like me would be called a prepper. I'm not a prepper. I never have been. I do stay prepared. I try to prepare enough food during the growing season so I have enough of what I need during the season when I can't grow. Yes, that is preparation, but that doesn't make you a prepper. It doesn't matter how much you put back. I know I dumped out some uh, pickled okra that I had for was 5 years old, and because I prepared to have some, and circumstances changed, and we didn't eat as much as we had put up, and it started getting soft. Flavor wasn't quite as good, so we'll put up some new this year. But we know how much we're going to need, so we won't put up near as much as we did at that time. But that's preparedness. That's not prepping. But if you want to be a prepper, if you think that's cool, then be a prepper. But those of us that grew up and we had an older generation that grew their own food, that canned their own food, that put it up so they had it in times whenever they couldn't grow food. That's called self-sufficiency. And that's what I encourage everyone to be, is self-sufficient. Take the time, get out there, grow a garden. You're going to find that the more you start researching what's in the store, what you're eating, and especially prepared food, you're going to wonder how our government let all this happen to our food source. But anyway, I guess that's enough of that. I don't want to appear negative or something or depress anyone. What I want people to do is get out, get in that garden, get your hands dirty, and enjoy how much enjoyment you can get out of that garden. And of course, if you want to see more gardening videos, self-sufficiency, canning, freeze drying, such as that, and you're not a subscriber, hit that subscribe, hit the bell, select all. And of course, everyone give it a big thumbs up, and y'all hit that share button, share this video. Enjoy that gardening experience.